During emergency surgery, my husband Alvin emptied our accounts, $200 to $37,000 gone overnight. She probably won't make it anyway, he told his brother while standing beside my hospital bed. When I discovered the betrayal, I smiled knowingly. The Kiao inheritance portfolio worth $1.8 million that my grandfather left me was something I'd never mentioned to him in our 12 years of marriage. The pain hit first, searing, white-hot agony radiating from my abdomen. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'd been experiencing intermittent discomfort for weeks, but nothing like this. As I collapsed on our kitchen floor that Tuesday morning, the last thing I remembered was fumbling for my phone. Alvin's contact illuminated on the screen. I woke to the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors and the antiseptic smell that seems embedded in the very walls of medical facilities. The room was dim, window blinds filtering the afternoon sunlight into thin stripes across my blanket. My throat felt raw, my mouth cotton dry. "Mrs. Bennett, can you hear me?" A nurse with kind eyes leaned over me, adjusting something on my IV line. Her name tag read Emily. I tried to speak, producing only a raspy whisper. "What happened?" "You had a ruptured appendix that developed into peritonitis," she explained, offering me a small cup of ice chips. "Dr. Lester performed emergency surgery. You've been in and out of consciousness for 4 days now with a serious infection. Your fever finally broke last night." 4 days. The realization swept over me like a cold wave. I had presentations scheduled, client meetings, deadlines that couldn't be missed. I managed the investment portfolio for Barrett and Hodges, a boutique, financial firm in downtown Portland. My clients trusted me with millions. They relied on my precision and reliability. "My husband?" I asked, my voice still weak. Emily's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "He's been in a few times. I can call him if you'd like." Something in her tone made me hesitate. "What time is it?" "Just after 2 in the afternoon. Alvin would be teaching his university economics class now." I shook my head slightly. "Later is fine. My phone?" "Your personal items are in the cabinet," Emily said, retrieving my handbag. "Doctor says you'll need to stay for at least another week. The infection was quite severe. We almost lost you twice." The gravity of my condition slowly sank in as Emily explained the procedures I'd undergone, the complications, the touch-and-go moments during the night when my fever had spiked dangerously high. I'd been much closer to death than I'd initially realized. After Emily left, I reached for my phone with trembling fingers. The screen lit up with dozens of notifications, missed calls, texts, emails. Nothing from Alvin in the past 2 days, which seemed odd. I opened our joint banking app first, a habit born from years of managing our finances. The screen loaded, and my heart nearly stopped. Our checking account, $182.47. Our savings account, 000. Our emergency fund, 0.00. Just last week, these accounts had contained over $237,000, our life savings, carefully accumulated over 12 years of marriage. Money set aside for a down payment on the lake house we'd been discussing, for potential fertility treatments we might need, for security. All gone. My fingers moved frantically across the screen, checking transaction histories. Large withdrawals, all within the last 3 days. All authorized by Alvin, $50,000 transferred to an account I didn't recognize. $75,000 wire transfer. $112,000 withdrawn in person at our local branch. I struggled to breathe, the monitor beside me beginning to beep more rapidly. This had to be a mistake. Perhaps Alvin had moved the money to protect it somehow. But why not tell me? Why not answer my calls? As I scrolled through my missed calls again, I noticed something even more disturbing. Alvin had been in contact with Our financial advisor at Barrett and Hodges. 3 calls in the past 2 days. My confusion deepened. Alvin had always left our professional finances to me, showing little interest in investment strategies or portfolio management. My thumb hovered over his contact, ready to demand explanations when a memory surfaced, something from the hazy, fever-filled days I'd just endured. Alvin's voice, speaking softly near my bedside, not to me but to someone else in the room. The doctors aren't optimistic. The infection spread too far. His tone had been somber but somehow rehearsed. She probably won't make it anyway. We should discuss what happens next. Had I dreamed that? Hallucinated it during my fever? I couldn't be certain. I placed the phone down, my mind racing despite the fog of medication. Something wasn't right. I needed more information before confronting Alvin. Emily? I called when the nurse returned to check my vitals. Has my husband been here with anyone else? A visitor? Emily adjusted something on my IV pump. His brother, I think? Tall gentleman, similar features but with glasses. She hesitated. They were in yesterday morning, speaking with Dr. Lester about your condition. Harold, Alvin's older brother who lived in Seattle. They weren't particularly close. Why would Harold come all this way unless Alvin had called with truly dire news about my condition? Did you happen to overhear any of their conversation? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Emily's hands stilled. She glanced toward the door before responding in a lower voice. I shouldn't say this, but something felt off. I came in to check your medication, and they were talking by the window. Your husband said something about accounts being cleared out, and his brother asked if anyone would notice. My heart sank. So I hadn't imagined it. When they saw me, they stopped talking immediately, Emily continued. It struck me as strange. Most families discuss insurance coverage or medical costs openly with staff. I closed my eyes, pieces falling, into horrible alignment. The money, the hushed conversations, the lack of communication. While I fought for my life, my husband of 12 years had been systematically emptying our accounts, discussing my impending death with his brother, as if it were a foregone conclusion. The betrayal cut deeper than the surgical wounds in my abdomen, but beneath the shock and pain, something else stirred, a cold, calculated realization. Alvin knew about our joint accounts, about my salary at Barrett and Hodges, about the modest inheritance from my mother that we'd used as a down payment on our home. What Alvin didn't know, what I'd never told him, was about my grandfather. My maternal grandfather, Xavier Blackwood, had been a shrewd investor with trust issues that bordered on paranoia. When he passed away 6 years ago, he left his entire portfolio to me in a complex trust structure that ensured it remained solely in my name, inaccessible to any spouse without multiple layers of legal consent. The inheritance was substantial, $1.8 million in diversified investments, managed through a private banking division completely separate from my everyday finances. I'd never mentioned it to Alvin, not out of malice or distrust, but because of the strange stipulation my grandfather had included. This inheritance remains undisclosed until absolutely necessary. Money reveals character, and character determines deservingness. At the time, I'd found the condition eccentric, even unnecessary. Alvin and I had a happy marriage. We shared everything. Why create financial secrets? Now, lying in my hospital bed, monitors beeping around me as I processed my husband's betrayal, my grandfather's wisdom echoed with painful clarity. Money indeed reveals character. And Alvin had just shown me exactly who he was. I took a deep breath, my fingers reaching, instinctively for the thin gold chain around my neck. The tiny key pendant, which Alvin had always assumed was merely sentimental jewelry, was the physical access key to the safe deposit box containing all documentation of my hidden fortune. Emily, I said quietly, could you do me a favor? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Need my laptop from home. The nurse looked concerned. You should be resting, not working. I offered a small smile that didn't reach my eyes. Trust me, this can't wait, and I'll need a witness for some documents I'll be signing. As Emily left to make arrangements, I stared out the window at the Portland skyline. What had my husband planned to do after I was gone? Run away with our life savings? Start fresh as if our 12 years together had meant nothing? He would discover very soon that underestimating me would be the most expensive mistake of his life. Emily returned the following morning with my laptop tucked under her arm and a concerned expression on her face. Your husband was at the nurse's station asking about your condition, she said, glancing over her shoulder. He seemed surprised when Dr. Lester mentioned your improvement. Did he come to see me? I asked, already knowing the answer. He said he had a faculty meeting to attend, but would return this evening. Emily placed my laptop on the adjustable table. I didn't tell him I was getting this for you. Thank you. The gratitude I felt went beyond the simple errand. In less than 24 hours, Emily had become my unexpected ally in a battle I was still trying to comprehend. Once alone, I powered up my laptop and accessed my secure email. 3 messages from my office, expressing concern about my absence and wishes for a speedy recovery. Nothing from Alvin, not even a text asking how I was feeling. The silence was deafening. I navigated to our joint credit card accounts. Just as I feared, they too showed unusual activity. Purchases at high-end men's stores, a reservation at the Four Seasons in Seattle, a receipt for a first-class flight to Vancouver. Alvin, who had always been frugal to the point of austerity during our marriage, was suddenly living like there was no tomorrow. Or rather, like there would be no me tomorrow. The betrayal crystallized, sharp and clear. This wasn't opportunistic theft committed in a moment of weakness. This was calculated, planned, executed with precision while I lay fighting for my life. He had waited until I was at my most vulnerable before making his move. I was still staring at the screen when there was a soft knock at the door. Dr. Lester entered, chart in hand, his expression serious. Mrs. Bennett, how are you feeling today? He asked, checking the monitors beside my bed. Physically or emotionally? I responded, turning my laptop screen away. He paused, studying my face. I understand this is a difficult time. Your condition was extremely serious, and recovery will be challenging. Did you tell my husband I was likely to die? The question came out more bluntly than I intended. Dr. Lester's brow furrowed. Absolutely not. While your case was certainly critical, at no point did I indicate to your husband that your death was certain or even probable. We discussed the seriousness of the infection and potential complications, but I was quite clear about our treatment plan and your improving prognosis. That's not what he told his brother, I said quietly. Dr. Lester placed my chart on the table, his professional demeanor softening slightly. Mrs. Bennett, Irene, I've been practicing medicine for 27 years. I've seen family dynamics under stress reveal unexpected patterns. Is there something I should know about your home situation? I hesitated, then decided transparency with my medical team could only help. My husband has emptied our accounts while I've been hospitalized. Over $200,000 gone. Dr. Lester's expression remained neutral, but his eyes reflected concern. I see. While that's not a medical issue, it could certainly impact your recovery environment. We can arrange for a hospital social worker if you'd like. Not yet, I replied, a plan already forming in my mind. But I may need your help with something else. The exact timeline of my condition and prognosis, documented officially, and possibly testimony about what information was conveyed to my husband. You're thinking legally, he observed. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in days. After Dr. Lester left, I took a deep breath and made the call I'd been avoiding. The direct line to Gianna Hartford the private wealth manager who handled my grandfather's inheritance. Irene, I was just about to call you, Gianna's familiar voice answered. There have been some inquiries about your accounts. My stomach tightened. What kind of inquiries? A man claiming to be your husband contacted our office yesterday. He said you were critically ill and he needed to access your accounts for medical expenses. When informed that he wasn't authorized on any of your holdings, he became quite insistent. So Alvin had known about the inheritance after all. Or at least, suspected it. What exactly did you tell him? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Nothing beyond confirming that we manage certain investments for you. Client confidentiality protected the details. He wasn't happy about it. Gianna paused. Irene, what's going on? Are you actually in the hospital? I am, but I'm recovering. And it seems my husband has been making financial preparations that don't include me in the picture. I explained the situation briefly, Gianna's sharp intake of breath confirming the severity of Alvin's actions. That's beyond disturbing, she said when I finished. What do you need from me? Complete lockdown of all accounts. New security protocols. And I need to make sure Alvin can't access anything, even indirectly. Consider it done. I'll also send Leah from our legal department to see you. This requires more than financial protection. You need legal counsel immediately. After ending the call, I leaned back against my pillows, exhaustion washing over me. The medication, the surgery, the emotional trauma, it was all taking a toll. But beneath the fatigue burned a steady flame of determination. Emily returned to, Check my IV, finding me typing rapidly on my laptop. You should rest, she admonished gently. I will, I promised. But first, I need to document everything. Times, dates, transactions. The digital trail Alvin thinks is hidden. Emily adjusted my pillows, her expression thoughtful. My sister went through something similar last year. Different circumstances, same betrayal. She said the hardest part wasn't the money. It was realizing. Her whole marriage had been built on shifting sand. I paused, looking up at her. How did she handle it? She hired the most ruthless divorce attorney in Seattle and took her husband for everything he was worth. Emily smiled slightly. She's in Hawaii right now, starting a photography business she always dreamed of. Despite everything, I found myself smiling too. I like your sister's style. I'll bring you something from the cafeteria, Emily said, heading toward the door. Oh, and Mrs. Bennett? Security knows not to let your husband in without calling me first, just in case you need. Time to prepare. As the door closed behind her, I returned to my documentation with renewed focus. Alvin had taught economics for 12 years, but he was about to learn an entirely different lesson about assets, liabilities, and the true cost of betrayal. Alvin finally appeared at 7:48 that evening, carrying a small bouquet of grocery store flowers and wearing an expression of practiced concern. I'd been waiting for him, my laptop closed and tucked away, my face carefully neutral despite the storm raging inside me. Irene, you're awake, he said, placing the flowers on the side table. His voice carried the appropriate amount of relief, but his eyes darted to the monitors as if assessing how much longer I might be tethered to them. The doctor said you've stabilized. That's wonderful news. Is it? I asked quietly. He pulled a chair beside the bed and took my hand in his. I resisted the urge to snatch it away. Of course it is. You had me terrified. They said the infection had spread throughout your abdomen, that your organs might be compromised. I studied his face, the face I'd woken up to for 12 years, the face I'd trusted completely. His dark hair was freshly cut, his typically casual academic style replaced with a new dress shirt I'd never seen before. A faint scent of unfamiliar cologne hung in the air between us. You've been shopping, I observed. His smile faltered slightly. Just a few things. Stress shopping, I guess. Everyone copes differently. Everyone certainly does, I agreed. Some people shop. Some empty joint bank accounts containing their life savings. The silence that followed was absolute. Alvin's hand went slack around mine, then withdrew completely. His expression cycled rapidly through shock, denial, and calculation before settling on contrived confusion. "What are you talking about?" he asked, but the slight tremor in his voice betrayed him. $237,000, Alvin. Transferred and withdrawn within 3 days, while I was fighting for my life in this hospital bed. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "You're confused. The medication, the infection, they can cause disorientation. We should call Dr. Lester." "I've already spoken with Dr. Lester," I replied calmly. "He confirmed he never told you I was dying. Yet you told Harold exactly that I probably won't make it anyway." Alvin's shoulders stiffened. When he turned back to face me, his expression had hardened. "You were eavesdropping?" Hard to eavesdrop when you're in a medically induced state to fight a massive infection. But apparently, even in that condition, my brain registered my husband planning for my convenient death. "This is ridiculous. I moved some money for safety reasons after your hospitalization. Identity theft is common when people learn about medical emergencies. I was protecting our assets. By booking first-class tickets to Vancouver? By reserving a suite at the Four Seasons in Seattle? By purchasing $4,000 worth of designer clothing?" I let the evidence speak for itself. Alvin's facade cracked. His eyes narrowed, his posture shifting from concerned spouse to cornered predator. "You shouldn't have access to your laptop. You should be resting. And you shouldn't be stealing our life savings. Yet here we are." He moved closer to the bed, his voice lowering. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The university is cutting tenured positions. My department is being restructured. We needed a safety net." "We," I repeated. "Yet you didn't consult me. You didn't even tell me about these supposed career concerns. I was protecting you from additional stress. You were preparing to disappear with our money." The words hung between us, an accusation he couldn't deflect. Alvin's expression darkened. "You can't prove that." "I don't need to prove it to know it's true." I pressed the call button beside my bed. "But I have documented every transaction, every purchase, every withdrawal. And I've shared that documentation with people who can ensure you don't get away with it." Fear flickered across his face. "People? What people?" The door opened as Emily entered, her eyes quickly assessing the tension in the room. "Everything all right, Mrs. Bennett?" "Actually, Emily, my husband was just leaving." I met Alvin's gaze, steadily. "He has some financial matters to attend to." Alvin's jaw tightened. "This isn't over, Irene. You're making accusations without understanding the full picture." "Oh, I understand perfectly. And you're right. This isn't over. Not by a long shot." When he finally left, Emily checked my vitals, noting my elevated heart rate. That didn't look pleasant. "It wasn't," I admitted, the facade of strength I'd maintained during the confrontation beginning to crumble. "But it was necessary." "Should I call someone for you? Family? A friend?" I shook my head. "My parents are in Europe. My closest friends." I trailed off, realizing how isolated I'd become over the years. Alvin had always preferred our social life to revolve around his academic circles. Gradually, my own friendships had atrophied from neglect. "Then I'll stay a while," Emily said, pulling up a chair. "Hospital policy says I need to monitor you after emotional distress anyway." As she sat with me, her steady presence a comfort in the sterile room, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. "Alvin, we need to talk about this rationally." "You're not thinking clearly." I turned off the phone without responding. There was nothing left to say to the man I'd thought would be by my side for life, who had instead been planning an exit strategy at what he believed would be my deathbed. "He'll try to get back into the accounts," Emily warned. "Let him try," I replied, a cold certainty settling over me. "He has no idea what's coming. That night, sleep eluded me despite the medication. My mind raced through the years with Alvin, searching for signs I might have missed. The reluctance to discuss children until our finances were more secure. The subtle encouragement to maintain separate professional lives. The way he'd shown interest in my family background, but changed the subject whenever my grandfather was mentioned. Had our entire marriage been a long con? Or had something changed along the way, transforming the man I loved into someone capable of such calculation? By morning, it didn't matter. The why had become irrelevant. All that mattered now was ensuring Alvin didn't profit from his betrayal. Q. Sunrise brought clarity and a visitor. Leah Chen, the legal counsel from my private bank, a petite woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Gianna briefed me, she said after introducing herself. We need to move quickly to protect your assets and begin building a case against your husband. I nodded, ready to fight. Tell me what I need to do. Leah Chen worked with the efficiency of someone who had seen financial betrayal many times before. She pulled up a chair beside my hospital bed, opened her leather portfolio, and laid out a strategic approach with military precision. First, we secure what remains of your joint assets, she began, typing notes on a sleek tablet. Freezing accounts, credit cards, investment portfolios. Then we document everything that's been taken without your knowledge or consent. I nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Alvin's already emptied most of our joint accounts. But not your grandfather's trust, Leah reminded me. And that's your most powerful asset now, both financially and strategically. She was right. Xavier Blackwood's paranoia about family money had created a fortress around his assets that even Alvin, with all his economic expertise, couldn't breach. The irony wasn't lost on me. What about our house? I asked. The mortgage is in both our names. We'll file an injunction preventing any changes to the property status, Leah explained. He won't be able to sell it, refinance it, or take out equity without court approval during divorce proceedings. The word divorce hung in the air. Until that moment, I hadn't fully accepted that my marriage was over. Now it seemed inevitable, the only possible response to such betrayal. This won't be a simple divorce, I said quietly. He tried to profit from what he thought would be my death. Leah's expression hardened. Which is why we'll be bringing in criminal counsel as well. Financial exploitation of an incapacitated person is a serious offense in this state. Add potential insurance fraud if he was planning to claim benefits. He was, I confirmed, remembering the policy we'd taken out 5 years earlier. $1 million life insurance policy that he insisted we needed. We'll need more evidence, Leah cautioned. Text messages, emails, witness statements from hospital staff who overheard conversations. The stronger our documentation, the less likely he is to fight this. Our planning session was interrupted by a knock at the door. Dr. Lester entered, accompanied by an unfamiliar woman in a crisp pantsuit. Mrs. Bennett, this is Detective Gianna Morales from Financial Crimes, Dr. Lester introduced her. She'd like to speak with you if you're feeling up to it. Detective Morales stepped forward, her expression professional but compassionate. The hospital administration contacted us after certain concerns were raised about your financial situation during your incapacitation. I glanced at Dr. Lester, who nodded slightly. He had taken my concerns seriously enough to involve authorities. I'm already working with legal counsel, I indicated Leah, but I welcome the police involvement. This goes beyond a domestic dispute. For the next hour, I provided Detective Morales with a detailed account of everything I'd discovered. The emptied accounts, Alvin's comments to his brother, his attempts to access my protected inheritance. She took meticulous notes, occasionally, asking clarifying questions. This pattern is unfortunately familiar, she said when I finished. Financial abuse often escalates during health crises when victims are most vulnerable. Is there enough for criminal charges? Leah asked directly. Potentially. Detective Morales tucked away her notebook. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, wire fraud, possibly attempted insurance fraud depending on what else we uncover. I'll need access to all financial records, and will want to interview staff who interacted with your husband during your hospitalization. After she left, promising to begin the investigation immediately, Emily returned with my lunch tray and news. Your husband tried to visit again this morning, she reported. Security turned him away per the restriction you requested. He wasn't happy about it. Did he make a scene? I asked, picking at the hospital food without appetite. Not exactly, but he did try to convince the charge nurse that you were mentally compromised from medication and shouldn't be making financial or legal decisions. Emily's expression showed what she thought of that tactic. Dr. Lester shut that down immediately. He'll try other approaches, Leah warned. Men like your husband don't give up easily once they've committed to a course of action. As if on cue, my phone lit up with messages from Alvin. This is a misunderstanding. Call off the lawyers and police. You're making a spectacle of our private matters. My department chair is asking questions. Think about my career. And finally, you don't know what you're doing, Irene. You never understood finance the way I do. I showed the messages to Leah, who documented them as evidence of attempted manipulation. He still thinks he's the smart one. In this scenario, I observed, a bitter laugh escaping me. The economics professor versus the investment portfolio manager. Let him underestimate you, Leah advised. It's to our advantage. By evening, our team had expanded further. Leah had brought in Eric Davidson, a criminal attorney specializing in financial crimes, and coordinated with Gianna Hartford from my private bank to provide complete documentation of Alvin's attempted access to my inheritance. We've changed all security protocols, Gianna assured me during our conference call. Even if he somehow obtained your passwords or personal information, additional biometric verification would be required for any transactions. He doesn't know about the key. I touched the necklace I still wore. But I wouldn't put it past him to search for documentation while I'm stuck here. Eric, the criminal attorney, leaned forward. Which raises an important point. Is there anything at your home you need secured? Documents? Devices? Personal items? I thought about our house, the home we'd built together that now felt like an extension of Alvin's deception. My home office has a hidden safe with backup documentation for all my accounts, and my personal laptop contains client information that could be compromised. I can arrange for those to be retrieved, Detective Morales offered, having rejoined our meeting. With a police escort to ensure nothing is disturbed. I should come too, Emily said unexpectedly from where she'd been standing by the door. We all turned to look at her, and she straightened her shoulders. As a witness, someone who can verify Mrs. Bennett's property without bias. If that would help? Her offer touched me deeply. This nurse, who had started as a caregiver and become an ally, was now volunteering to extend her help beyond hospital walls. That would be very helpful, Detective Morales confirmed. Tomorrow morning? As our impromptu strategy session concluded, I felt something I hadn't experienced since waking. In the hospital, strength. Not just the physical strength slowly returning to my body, but something more powerful. The strength that comes from no longer facing betrayal alone. Alvin had calculated that isolation would be his advantage. A critically ill wife without immediate family nearby, her professional network unaware of her condition, her finances vulnerable, during her incapacitation. What he hadn't calculated was that his actions would catalyze the formation of this team of professionals now arrayed against him. A nurse who recognized ethical violations when she saw them. A doctor unwilling to be complicit in deception. Financial and legal experts committed to justice. Law enforcement ready to investigate. As twilight settled over Portland, I gazed out my hospital window at the city lights flickering to life. Somewhere out there, Alvin was realizing his carefully constructed plan was unraveling. Perhaps he was making desperate calls to his brother, Harold, trying to contain the damage. Maybe he was attempting to access accounts only to find them frozen. He might even be consulting an attorney of his own, finally understanding the severity of what he'd done. Let him scramble, I thought, with newfound resolve. Let him feel a fraction of the panic and betrayal I had experienced. The game had changed, and Alvin was about to discover he was playing against a team, not just the vulnerable woman he'd tried to leave behind. The morning brought unexpected progress in my physical recovery. Dr. Lester seemed pleased as he examined my surgical site, noting the reduced inflammation and improved vital signs. "Your body's fighting back impressively," he observed. "At this rate, we might be able to discuss discharge in 5 to 7 days, rather than the 2 weeks I initially estimated." "That's good news," I replied, though the thought of returning to the home I'd shared with Alvin filled me with unease. "One day at a time," Dr. Lester said, seeming to read my thoughts. "And speaking of today, Detective Morales and your nurse Emily are ready to visit your home when you give the authorization. I signed the necessary forms, providing detailed instructions on where to find my important documents and personal items." After they left, I forced myself to eat the bland hospital breakfast, knowing I needed strength for what lay ahead. Leah arrived mid-morning with updates that exceeded my expectations. "The court granted our emergency petition," she announced, setting her briefcase on the bedside table. "Alvin can't access any joint assets or property during the investigation. Additionally, we've filed for an emergency domestic order preventing him from removing anything from your home except personal clothing and toiletries." "How did you get that processed so quickly?" I asked, impressed. "Judge Hammond has handled financial exploitation cases before. The medical documentation of your condition, combined with the clear evidence of large withdrawals while you were incapacitated, convinced her of the urgency." Leah allowed herself a small smile. "The fact that your husband tried to claim you were mentally compromised when Dr. Lester's notes clearly indicate otherwise didn't help his case." My phone buzzed with a message from Detective Morales. "At your house now, with Emily and officers. Husband not present. Proceeding as discussed." The knowledge that strangers were moving through my home in my absence felt surreal, but necessary. Minutes later, Emily initiated a video call, her face appearing on my screen. "We're in your home office," she reported, panning the camera to show the room. "Everything looks undisturbed, but—" She hesitated, turning the camera toward my desk. Papers were scattered across the surface, drawers partially open. My filing cabinet showed signs of hasty searching. "He's been looking for something," I said, anger building despite my clinical analysis. "Behind the watercolor painting on the east wall, there's a concealed safe. He might not know about it." Emily followed my instructions, sliding the painting aside to reveal the digital safe embedded in the wall. "It's still locked," she confirmed. "What's the code?" I hesitated before sharing the 6-digit combination, my grandfather's birthday. Inside, they found exactly what I hoped: backup copies of my trust documents, the original deed to a small vacation property in my name alone, and a portable hard drive containing encrypted financial records. "This is extremely helpful," Detective Morales said, taking possession of the items. "We've also found something concerning in the master bedroom." The camera shifted to show my walk-in closet. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss, until Emily pushed aside my hanging clothes to reveal empty space where Alvin's belongings should have been. "His clothes are gone," I observed unnecessarily. "His luggage too, I'm guessing." "Yes," Detective Morales confirmed, and based on the neighbor we briefly interviewed, he loaded several suitcases into his car 2 days ago, so he had been planning to leave. The evidence of premeditation would strengthen the case against him, but the confirmation of his intentions still stung. As they continued the search, more pieces fell into place. Hidden in Alvin's home office desk, they discovered printouts of luxury real estate listings in Vancouver, employment opportunities at Canadian universities, and, most damning, A folder containing information on legal name changes. He wasn't. Just planning to leave, Detective Morales said grimly. He was preparing to disappear entirely. Emily's face showed genuine shock as she held up a document for the camera. Mrs. Bennett, did you know about this bank account in Belize? I squinted at the statement featuring Alvin's name and a balance of nearly $90,000. No, I had no idea. Based. On the transactions, he's been making deposits for approximately 3 years, Detective Morales noted, reviewing the paperwork. Small amounts at first, gradually increasing. 3 years. The betrayal extended far deeper than I'd initially believed. While we'd been discussing renovating our kitchen, planning vacations together, attending his departmental dinners as a couple, Alvin had been systematically preparing for a life without me. There's something else, Emily said softly, holding up a small jewelry box. Inside was a woman's bracelet I'd never seen before, with a gift receipt dated just 2 weeks ago. The final piece clicked into place. This wasn't just financial betrayal, it was complete personal deception. The first-class tickets to Vancouver, the hotel reservation for 2, the expensive new clothes, the jewelry for someone else. Alvin hadn't just been planning to take our money. He'd been planning to start a new life with another woman, waiting only for what he believed would be my convenient death to set his plan in motion. I closed my eyes, processing this final betrayal. When I opened them again, my resolve had hardened into something unbreakable. Detective Morales, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning beneath. I want to press every possible charge. The revelation of another woman in Alvin's life shouldn't have surprised me, yet somehow it delivered the sharpest pain. Financial betrayal was one thing, a calculated crime that could almost be separated from emotion. But this evidence of romantic betrayal cut straight to my heart. We need to identify her, Detective Morales stated as the search of our home concluded. She could be a co-conspirator or another victim. I turned to Leia, who had been silently documenting everything. Discovered in my home. How do we find her? The bracelet might give us a lead, she suggested. Designer jewelry typically has a serial number, and the receipt could help trace the purchase. Within hours, Detective Morales had a name. Rachel Winters, an assistant. Professor in Alvin's department who had joined the university just 2 years prior. A quick social media search revealed a striking brunette in her early 30s with an impressive academic pedigree and a specialty in behavioral economics. She's collaborating with Alvin on a research paper, Eric reported after making a few calls to contacts at the university. Their names have been linked professionally for at least 18 months. The timeline aligned perfectly with the escalation of deposits to the Belize account. What had started as financial preparation had evolved into something more personal. Complete exit strategy from his marriage. We should talk to her, Detective Morales decided. She may have valuable information, whether she's aware of his plans or not. I was contemplating this development when Emily entered with an unexpected visitor, Dr. Harold Bennett, Alvin's brother. My heart rate spiked immediately, triggering an alert on my monitors. He insisted on seeing you, Emily explained apologetically. Security cleared him since he's family. Harold stood awkwardly at the foot of my bed, his resemblance to Alvin unsettling. The same dark hair, though Harold's was graying at the temples. The same lean build, though Harold carried himself with less confidence. Even their voices shared a similar timbre. The voice I'd heard discussing my probable death while I lay seemingly unconscious. "What do you want?" I asked coldly. Harold shifted his weight, adjusting his glasses nervously. "I need to explain something. Irene, about what you may have heard." "I heard plenty," I replied. "You and Alvin discussing my accounts being cleared out, how I probably wouldn't make it anyway. Does that sound familiar?" Harold's face paled. It wasn't what it sounded like. Then enlighten me. He pulled a chair closer but maintained distance, as if afraid to enter my personal space. "Alvin told me you were dying, that the doctors gave You less than a 40% chance of survival. He said you'd discussed contingency plans for your finances if something happened. We never had any such discussion, I stated flatly. I'm starting to realize that. Harold ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like Alvin's that it made my chest tighten. Look, I'm not defending him. When he called me to Seattle saying you were critically ill, I came to support my brother. He was presenting himself as the devastated husband, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. And the money? I pressed. He said he was consolidating accounts for simplicity during your medical crisis, that the transfers were temporary measures to protect joint assets while you were incapacitated. Harold's expression showed dawning comprehension of his brother's deception. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He's my brother, and he's always been the responsible one, the planner. I studied his face, searching for signs of complicity. You were in this room when he said I wouldn't need the money where I was. Going, Harold winced. He was talking about moving funds to a special account for your long-term care if you survived, but remained compromised. At least that's what he told me. The explanation was plausible, but something felt off. Why are you here now, Harold? Why not stay loyal to your brother? A long silence followed before he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded document. Because I found this in Alvin's briefcase when he stayed at my place last night. He handed me what appeared to be a prenuptial agreement between Alvin and Rachel Winters, dated for the following month. He's planning to marry her, I whispered, the document trembling in my hands. In Vancouver, Harold confirmed, where divorces from incapacitated spouses can be expedited under certain circumstances. My legal team exchanged glances, the implications clear. Alvin hadn't just been planning to take my money and disappear with another woman. He'd been planning to legalize their relationship while I was supposedly dying, maximizing his claim to any assets that might come through inheritance or insurance. Why? Show me this? I asked Harold directly. He's your brother. Harold removed his glasses, suddenly looking older and very tired. Because my brother died the moment he decided to profit from your illness. The man planning this calculated betrayal isn't the Alvin I thought I knew. He stood to leave, pausing at the door. I've already given copies to the detective. And Irene? I'm sorry. For whatever part I played in this, however unwittingly. I'm truly sorry. After he left, the room remained silent as we all processed this new information. The prenuptial agreement provided concrete evidence of premeditation, strengthening both the criminal and civil cases against Alvin. We should bring Rachel Winters in for questioning immediately, Detective Morales said, already reaching for her phone. And update the court filing with this new evidence, Eric added, photographing the document. As they mobilized around me, I felt a strange calm settling over my thoughts. The pain was still there, perhaps it always would be, but now it was, accompanied by clarity. Every revelation, every betrayal, every discovered lie was another step toward justice. And justice, I was beginning to realize, would be the only thing that could truly begin to heal this wound. Rachel Winters arrived at the hospital that afternoon, not in police custody as I'd expected, but voluntarily and alone. Detective Morales escorted her to my room, where Leah and Eric had remained to provide support. Rachel was everything I wasn't. Tall, where I was petite, confident where I'd grown cautious, her academic brilliance matched by striking beauty. She stood in the doorway assessing me with analytical eyes that betrayed nothing of her feelings. You wanted to see me? Her voice was steady, professional, the voice of someone accustomed to lecture halls and academic debates. I thought we should meet, I replied, equally composed despite the turmoil beneath the surface. Given that my husband has been planning a future with you using money stolen from me. To my surprise, Rachel pulled up a chair and sat down, placing her handbag precisely on the floor beside her. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Mrs. Bennett, one that I'm just beginning to grasp myself. Detective Morales remained by the door, watchful but allowing the conversation to unfold. "We found the prenuptial agreement," I said flatly. "And the jewelry he bought you. The hotel reservations for 2 in Vancouver." Rachel's expression shifted subtly. Not the guilt I expected, but something harder to read. "Did Alvin tell you we were involved romantically?" The question caught me off guard. "He didn't have to. The evidence speaks for itself." "The evidence can be misleading." She pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, then handed it to me. "This is the only relationship I've had with Alvin Bennett." On the screen was an email thread between them discussing a research paper on economic decision-making during health crises. Professional, academic, without a hint of personal involvement. "Scroll further," she instructed. I did, finding dozens of similar exchanges, all strictly professional, spanning the past 2 years. Nothing romantic, nothing personal, nothing to suggest they were planning a life together. "I don't understand," I admitted, confused by the contradiction between this evidence and what we'd found. Neither did I, until Detective Morales contacted me this morning. Rachel reclaimed her phone, her expression hardening. "Alvin and I collaborated on research. Nothing more. I've never received jewelry from him, never planned a trip with him, and certainly never discussed marriage." Detective Morales stepped forward. "Ms. Winters has provided alibis for the dates when the jewelry was purchased and when the hotel reservations were made. She was presenting at conferences in Chicago and Berlin, respectively." "Then who—" I began, the question hanging incomplete as Rachel answered. "The prenuptial agreement was drafted without my knowledge or consent," she explained, anger finally breaking through her professional demeanor. "My signature on it is forged. Expertly, but definitely forged. I've already submitted handwriting samples to prove it." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Alvin hadn't just betrayed me. He'd created an elaborate fiction involving an unwitting colleague. "Why you?" I asked finally. "Why create this specific deception?" Rachel's expression softened slightly. "I've been wondering the same thing. The best explanation I can offer is convenience. We worked together closely on research. He had access to samples of my signature on documents. And perhaps most importantly, I have no social media presence and keep my personal life extremely private. The perfect person to impersonate in a fictional relationship. It made a terrible kind of sense. Rachel's limited digital footprint would have made it difficult for me to discover the truth had I become suspicious." "There's more," Detective Morales interjected gently. "We've traced the transactions from your joint accounts. Most of the money wasn't used for luxury purchases as it initially appeared." She handed me a printout of transaction records. The bulk of our $237,000 savings had been transferred through a series of accounts before landing in an investment portfolio registered to an Alexander Bennett, a name I didn't recognize. "Who is Alexander Bennett?" I asked, scanning the documents. "That's what makes this case even more complex," Detective Morales replied. "According to records we've obtained, Alexander Bennett is Alvin's son from a previous relationship, a relationship he apparently never disclosed to you." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. A son. Alvin had a son he'd never mentioned in 12 years of marriage. "His son is 22, Detective Morales continued, currently living in Vancouver and attending graduate school there. The hotel reservations, the first-class tickets, they appear to have been for Alvin and his son, not a romantic partner." "The jewelry?" I asked, still struggling to process this new reality. "Likely for the son's fiancée. They became engaged last month, according to social media posts." The room seemed to tilt slightly as my understanding of the betrayal shifted. Not a lover, but a secret family. Not running away with another woman, but reconnecting with a son kept hidden from me for our entire marriage. "Why?" I whispered, the question directed at no one in particular. "Why hide this from me?" Rachel, who had been listening silently, offered an unexpected perspective. In our research on financial decision-making, Alvin always focused on scenarios involving hidden assets and undisclosed dependents. I thought it was theoretical interest. Now I wonder if he was working through his own moral justifications. Detective Morales nodded grimly. We're still piecing it together, but it appears Alvin has been secretly supporting his son financially for years. Your illness may have triggered a decision to consolidate those efforts and potentially leave the country to be closer to him. The betrayal remained, but its shape had changed, becoming somehow both more understandable and more painful. Not a romantic deception, but a fundamental lie about who my husband was, a secret life maintained throughout our marriage. I'd like to be alone now, I said quietly, the weight of these revelations pressing down on me. As they filed out of the room, Emily slipped in, her face showing concern. I heard, "Are you okay?" I shook my head, finally allowing the tears to come. I don't know who he is. After 12 years, I realized I never knew him at all. I spent that night wrestling with the new reality of my marriage. Each memory now required re-examination, each moment together recontextualized by the knowledge of Alvin's secret son. The regular trips to academic conferences that always seemed to include stops in Vancouver. The mysterious phone calls he'd take in his study, voice lowered. The careful budgeting of our finances despite our comfortable dual incomes. By morning, my emotional exhaustion had crystallized into a cold clarity. The why no longer mattered as much as the what, and what Alvin had done was still criminal, regardless of his motivations. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Lester asked during his morning rounds, his concern extending beyond my physical condition. "Like I'm ready to end this chapter," I replied with newfound determination. "How soon can I be discharged?" "Physically, you're making remarkable progress," he acknowledged. "But there are still risks of secondary infection. I'd recommend at least 3 more days of observation and IV antibiotics." 3 more days. I could work with that timeline. When Leah arrived for our daily strategy session, I laid out my decision. I want to confront Alvin directly, not just through lawyers and police, but face to face. Her expression showed immediate concern. That could compromise our legal position. "Anything you say to him will be said with witnesses present," I assured her. "I'm not looking for reconciliation or explanation. I need closure, and that means looking him in the eye while he understands exactly what he's done and what's coming." Leah considered this, then nodded slowly. "We can arrange a controlled meeting, but we'll need to prepare you thoroughly." Detective Morales was more supportive of the idea when she arrived later. Confronting him might actually serve our investigation. People often reveal more when directly challenged by someone they've wronged. By afternoon, the plan was set. Alvin would be invited to the hospital under the pretense of discussing financial arrangements for my ongoing medical care, a conversation he couldn't reasonably refuse without raising suspicions. "He'll be suspicious anyway," Eric warned as we prepared. "He knows you've been investigating." "Let him be suspicious," I replied. "That's part of the point. I want him off balance." Emily helped me prepare physically for the confrontation, assisting with washing my hair and applying minimal makeup. These small acts of normalcy felt strangely empowering after days of hospital-enforced helplessness. "You look stronger," she observed as I sat up fully in bed, my hospital gown replaced by silk pajamas she'd retrieved from my home. "I am stronger," I confirmed, the statement true in ways that transcended my physical recovery. Detective Morales arranged for recording equipment to be discreetly placed in my room, both for evidence gathering and my protection. Eric and Leah positioned themselves as casual visitors, while Emily would monitor my vital signs under the guise of routine care. Alvin arrived precisely at 4 o'clock, his habitual punctuality unchanged despite the circumstances. He entered, cautiously, eyes darting around the room before settling on me. I noticed immediately that he looked tired, his usual academic composure fraying at the edges. "Thank you for coming," I began formally, my voice steadier than I'd anticipated. "The message said it was about medical expenses," he replied, remaining near the door as if calculating escape routes. "Though I'm surprised you wanted to see me, given the legal avalanche you've initiated. Please, sit down." I gestured to the chair positioned directly across from me. "This won't take long." He hesitated, then complied, maintaining what felt like a carefully measured distance. "If this is about the accounts, I can explain." "Alexander Bennett," I interrupted, watching his reaction carefully. "Your son." The color drained from his face so rapidly that for a moment I thought he might faint. His hands, always steady when writing complex equations on classroom boards, trembled visibly against his knees. "How did you—" he began, then stopped himself, recalibrating. "I was going to tell you. After 12 years of marriage, when exactly was that telling scheduled to happen?" Alvin's eyes dropped to the floor. "It's complicated." "No, it's actually quite simple," I countered. "You had a son before we met. You kept his existence secret from me for our entire relationship. You systematically diverted funds to support him behind my back. And when you thought I was dying, you decided to empty our accounts and disappear to be with him in Vancouver." Each sentence landed like a physical blow, his shoulders hunching further with each accusation. "I never meant to hurt you," he offered weakly. "And yet you falsified a prenuptial agreement with Rachel Winter's forged signature," I continued, my voice hardening. "Creating a fictional affair to cover your tracks? Were you planning to fake your own death too? Complete the disappearing?" "Act?" His head snapped up, genuine confusion crossing his features. "What?" "No, that's not— I never forged anything with Rachel." Detective Morales stepped forward from her position near the window. "We have the document, Professor Bennett, with Ms. Winter's forged signature and yours, apparently planning a marriage next month." Alvin's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror. "I didn't create that, I swear. Yes, I was planning to move to Vancouver to be closer to Alexander, but there was no fake engagement, no prenup." "Then who created it?" I challenged. "I don't know," he insisted, his academic mind visibly racing through possibilities. "Unless—" He stopped abruptly, a new understanding dawning on his face. "Unless what?" Detective Morales pressed. "Unless it was Harold," Alvin said quietly. "My brother has always been envious of my life, my career, my marriage to Irene. He tried to date her first, you know." This was news to me, and my surprise must have shown on my face. "It was before we met officially," Alvin explained. "He saw you at a faculty event, tried to ask you out. You turned him down. When we started dating a few months later, he never quite got over it. The revelation cast Harold's recent cooperation in a new light. Had he been manipulating the situation, adding forged documents to escalate the charges against his brother? Harold provided us with evidence against you," Detective Morales stated, watching Alvin's reaction. "Of course he did," Alvin laughed bitterly. "The perfect opportunity to finally take something from me while appearing to take the moral high ground." The conversation had veered into unexpected territory, adding layers of complexity to an already convoluted situation, but I refused to be distracted from the central issue. "None of this explains or excuses emptying our accounts while I was critically ill," I said firmly, pulling the focus back to his actions, "or lying about our entire marriage." Alvin's brief defiance crumbled. "No, it doesn't. I panicked when you went into the hospital. Alexander needed money for a medical procedure of his own, one not covered by his Canadian insurance. I'd been sending him smaller amounts for years, but this was urgent and substantial. When your condition worsened, I convinced myself you wouldn't notice if I took more than usual. You told your brother I was dying," I reminded him, "that I wouldn't need the money where I was going." I never said that, he insisted, looking genuinely shocked. I told Harold your condition was serious but stable, that the doctors were cautiously optimistic. Another layer of potential manipulation by Harold? Or was Alvin simply lying to save himself? With so many deceptions uncovered, it was impossible to know where truth ended and falsehood began. Why keep Alexander secret all these years? I asked. The question that hurt the most, still unanswered. Did you think I wouldn't accept him? Alvin's expression softened with genuine pain. His mother made me promise. She didn't want me in his life at all initially. The agreement we reached was that I could provide financial support and occasional visits, but I couldn't acknowledge him publicly or integrate him into my new life, as she called it. When I met you, I'd already been living with this arrangement. For years. The longer I kept the secret, the harder it became to tell you. And now? Detective Morales interjected. Alexander turned 22 last month. The agreement with his mother is no longer binding. He's free to have whatever relationship with me he chooses, and His voice caught. I wanted to finally be his father openly. When Irene got sick, it felt like a sign that it was time to stop living a divided life. As explanations went, it wasn't entirely unsympathetic, but sympathy couldn't erase the criminal nature of his actions or heal the fundamental breach of trust in our marriage. Thank you for your honesty finally, I said, feeling a strange sense of closure despite the new questions his revelations had raised. But it doesn't change what happens next. Alvin nodded, resignation settling over his features. I know, and I'll accept whatever consequences come. He hesitated. I just hope someday you can understand that I never stopped loving you. I just never figured out how to reconcile the two halves of my life. As Detective Morales stepped forward to end the meeting, I realized something unexpected. Beneath the anger and betrayal, I actually did understand. Not enough to forgive, not yet, but enough to see the tragic human failing at the core of his deception. A man trapped by his own choices, never brave enough to risk losing either part of his divided life until crisis forced his hand. Goodbye, Alvin, I said simply as he was escorted from the room. It felt like the end of a chapter, if not yet the resolution of the story. The revelation about Harold's potential involvement cast the entire situation in a different light. After Alvin left, Detective Morales immediately began making calls to investigate this new angle, while Leah and Eric huddled in the corner of my room, discussing legal implications. If the prenuptial agreement was forged by Harold rather than Alvin, it changes aspects of our case, Eric acknowledged, concern etched on his face. But it doesn't change the core issue, Leah countered. Alvin still emptied the accounts without authorization, while Irene was incapacitated. That stands regardless of his brother's manipulations. My mind was spinning, trying to separate fact from fiction, genuine explanation from convenient excuse. I'd spent days building a narrative of Alvin's betrayal that now had complications I hadn't anticipated. We need to speak with Harold again, Detective Morales announced, ending her phone call. Immediately. What did you find? I asked, noting her heightened urgency. The hotel reservation in Seattle wasn't made under Alvin's name or credit card. It was Harold's. And the timing of the jewelry purchase coincides with Harold being in Portland, not Alvin. This revelation hit me with unexpected force. Harold's apparent concern and cooperation had seemed so genuine. The devastated brother-in-law discovering his sibling's betrayal. Had it all been part of a more elaborate deception? I don't understand, I admitted. What would Harold gain from all this? Detective, Morales' expression was grim. We're still piecing that together, but financial records show Harold's company is on the verge of bankruptcy. He's leveraged to the hilt, with creditors closing in. And he knew about my grandfather's inheritance, I realized slowly. Alvin mentioned once that Harold had asked about my family's financial background. I thought it was just casual conversation at the time. Leah straightened, her legal mind connecting dots. If Harold created evidence to implicate his brother in more serious crimes while presenting himself as the concerned family member helping you, he might have been positioning himself to offer support during your recovery, Eric finished, gaining your trust while isolating you from Alvin. The thought sent a chill through me. Harold had seemed so sincere in his concern, so genuinely disappointed in his brother's actions. Had I been manipulated by both Bennett brothers? My phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. When I opened it, my breath caught. Mrs. Bennett, this is Alexander, your husband's son. I understand there's been a situation, and I'd like to speak with you if you're willing. I showed the message to the others, unsure how to respond. This could be enlightening, Detective Morales suggested. But proceed cautiously. We don't know what his relationship with Harold might be. After careful consideration, I agreed to a video call with Alexander, with my legal team and Detective Morales present but off camera. When the call connected, I found myself looking at a young man with Alvin's eyes and jawline, but a gentler expression. He sat in what appeared to be a small apartment, bookshelves filled with academic texts visible behind him. Mrs. Bennett, Irene. Thank you for speaking with me, he began, his voice carrying hints of Alvin's cadence but lacking the confident authority. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. So am I replied, studying his face for any sign of deception. How much do you know about what's happening? Enough to be concerned. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, the same nervous gesture I'd seen Alvin and Harold make. My father called yesterday telling me that his brother had somehow manipulated the situation with his accounts. It sounded confusing. Did your father tell you he took money from our accounts while I was hospitalized? I asked directly. Alexander nodded, his expression pained. He did. He also said it was to help with my medical expenses, which isn't entirely accurate. I did need surgery, a spinal procedure for a congenital issue, but I never asked him for financial help with it. Then, why take the money? According to Uncle Harold, my procedure would cost far more than my insurance would cover. He told my father he'd found a specialist in Vancouver who could help, but the treatment would require immediate payment of around $200,000. The pieces began falling into place with sickening clarity. There was no expensive specialist, was there? I guessed. No, Alexander confirmed. My procedure was covered by my university's international student insurance. When I told my father this, he seemed genuinely confused. That's when he started questioning what Uncle Harold had told him. Detective Morales leaned forward, her interest piqued. When did Harold first approach you about this supposed specialist? About 3 months ago, Alexander replied. Right around the time he suggested I should encourage Dad to move to Vancouver to be closer to me. The timeline aligned perfectly with my hospital admission. Did Harold ever mention my health to you? I asked. Alexander looked uncomfortable. He said you had ongoing health issues that made a long-term relationship unlikely, that you and my father had been growing apart because of these problems. His cheeks colored with embarrassment. I'm sorry. I realize now he was manipulating. Me too. The full picture was emerging with disturbing clarity. Harold hadn't just been adding forgeries to strengthen the case against his brother. He'd been orchestrating the entire situation from the beginning, creating a medical crisis for Alexander. That required immediate funds, suggesting Alvin move to Vancouver, planting the idea that my health was already failing before my actual emergency. Alexander, I said carefully, would you be willing to provide a formal statement about your communications? With Harold? Of course, he agreed without hesitation. I want to help fix whatever I can of this mess. And Mrs. Bennett, I'm truly sorry about your illness. Whatever has happened between you and my father, I never wished you any harm. His sincerity was evident, and I found myself believing him. Another victim in Harold's elaborate scheme, just as I had been. just as Alvin, for all his own deceptions, had been. After ending the call, I turned to my team, a new resolve hardening within me. We need to find Harold. Now. Finding Harold proved unexpectedly difficult. His cell phone went straight to voicemail, his Seattle office reported he was working remotely, and his home appeared vacant when local police conducted a welfare check at Detective Morales' request. He's running, Eric concluded during our strategy meeting the following morning. The question is, what exactly does he have to run with? Not my inheritance, I assured them. Gianna confirmed all accounts remain secure and untouched, and we've frozen the joint accounts Alvin emptied. Detective Morales tapped her pen thoughtfully against her notepad. The money Alvin withdrew, the $237,000, where exactly is it now? It was a question we'd been so focused on the who and why that we hadn't fully explored the where. According to Alvin, he transferred most of it to an account Harold set up supposedly for Alexander's medical care, I recalled. But Alexander confirmed no such medical expenses existed. So Harold now has nearly $250,000 of your money, Leah stated flatly, presumably in an account we haven't yet identified. The realization struck me that Harold's plan had been elegant in its simplicity. Create a fictional medical crisis for Alexander. Convince Alvin to empty our accounts to pay for it. Position himself as my ally when the theft was discovered, potentially gaining access to my substantial inheritance as I recovered and grew to trust him. If I had died, as he might have hoped given the severity of my condition, Alvin would have been left with depleted accounts and facing criminal charges, while Harold walked away with the money and clean hands. We need to check flights, I suggested. If he's running, he might be headed to wherever he stashed the money. Within an hour, Detective Morales had confirmation. Harold Bennett had boarded a flight to Grand Cayman the previous evening, shortly after our confrontation with Alvin. Offshore banking, Eric said grimly. Classic move for hiding illicit funds. Can we pursue him internationally? I asked. It's complicated, Detective Morales admitted. But not impossible, especially with clear evidence of fraud and the paper trail we're establishing. My discharge from the hospital was scheduled for the following day, and Dr. Lester appeared pleased with my recovery as he conducted his final examination. Physically, you're healing remarkably well, he noted, reviewing my latest test results. But I'm still concerned about your home situation. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? The question caught me off guard. In all the chaos surrounding Alvin's betrayal and Harold's manipulation, I hadn't given much thought to the practical matter of where I would go after leaving the hospital. She can stay with me, Emily offered unexpectedly from where she stood preparing my discharge paperwork. I have a guest room that's never used, at least until you decide what to do about your house. Her kindness touched me deeply. From caregiver to ally to friend, Emily had become an unexpected constant during the most tumultuous period of my life. Thank you, I accepted, grateful for the solution. As my team continued working to track Harold's movements and recover the stolen funds, I found myself mentally preparing for the next phase. The acute crisis was evolving into something more complex, a long-term process of recovery, both financial and emotional. That evening, alone in my hospital room for what would be the final night, I removed the small key pendant from around my neck and held it in my palm. My grandfather's inheritance had remained secure throughout this ordeal, protected by his paranoid foresight about family and money. But the true value of his legacy, I was beginning to realize, wasn't just the financial security it provided. It was the independence it granted me in this moment of betrayal. You were right, grandfather, I whispered to the empty room. Money does reveal character. And sometimes, I reflected as I replaced the necklace, it reveals strengths you never knew you had. Leaving the hospital felt like emerging from a cocoon. The world outside seemed unnervingly bright and loud after days confined to the quiet rhythms of medical care. Emily drove me to her apartment in Southeast Portland. a cozy two-bedroom with abundant houseplants and eclectic furnishings that reflected her warm personality. "It's not fancy," she apologized as she showed me to the guest room, "but it's safe and quiet." "It's perfect," I assured her, grateful for the sanctuary. Once settled, I contacted Gianna at the private bank handling my grandfather's trust. The time had come to access resources I had been fortunate enough to keep separate from my marriage. "I'd like to initiate a strategic withdrawal," I informed her during our video call. "Nothing that would impact the principal significantly, but enough to fund what we discussed." Gianna nodded, understanding the careful approach. "The trust allows for distributions of up to 4% annually without affecting the core investment. That would give you approximately $72,000 to work with immediately." "Perfect. Please transfer $50,000 to the account we established yesterday." With that initial move complete, I contacted Eric and Leah to implement the next phase of our plan. Harold might have fled to Grand Cayman with the stolen funds, but he had underestimated both my resources and my resolve. "I've engaged Stevens International," I informed them, referring to a specialized asset recovery firm with expertise in offshore financial investigations. "They'll be working in parallel with law enforcement, but with greater flexibility to operate in banking havens." The cost of hiring such experts was substantial, but my hidden fortune made it possible to pursue Harold without financial constraints. The investigators would require a $30,000 retainer, a sum that would have been devastating after the theft of our joint savings, but merely a tactical expenditure from my trust fund. "That's unusually thorough," Eric observed, clearly impressed by the escalation. "Most clients in your position would simply file insurance claims and focus on the divorce proceedings." "I'm not most clients," I replied simply. "And this isn't just about recovering money anymore. It's about justice." Detective Morales called that afternoon with an update on Alvin. "He's cooperating fully, providing access to all his accounts and communications with Harold. He's admitted to unauthorized withdrawals from your joint accounts but maintains he believed the money was for his son's medical treatment." "Do you believe him?" I asked, still unsure how to reconcile Alvin's betrayal with Harold's manipulation. "The evidence supports his version of events," she admitted, "which may reduce the criminal charges to misappropriation rather than theft. Still serious, but potentially without jail time." I absorbed this information with mixed emotions. Part of me had wanted to see Alvin face the harshest consequences possible. Another part recognized he too had been caught in his brother's web of deception, albeit through vulnerabilities created by his own long-standing lies. "What about Harold?" I pressed. "Any progress tracking him in Grand Cayman?" "Limited. He entered on a tourist visa, checked into the Ritz-Carlton, and made several visits to banks in the financial district. Without international warrants, which we're still working on, local authorities can't detain him." My phone pinged with an incoming message. A secure communication from Stevens International. Subject located. Accounts identified at 3 institutions. Legal intervention prepared for Monday market opening. Recommend immediate travel authorization for our Grand Cayman team. I forwarded the authorization without hesitation, along with approval for additional expenditures as needed. If Harold thought distance and banking secrecy laws would protect him, he was about to learn otherwise. "Is there any way to freeze his activity in the meantime?" I asked Detective Morales. "Something to prevent him from moving the money again before Monday?" She considered this. "Not through conventional law enforcement channels, not without the international warrants. But if your private investigators have identified specific accounts—" "They have," I confirmed. "Then a civil emergency injunction filed in the Cayman courts might work. It wouldn't be a criminal freeze, but it could temporarily prevent transfers while citing potential fraud." Within hours, Leah had coordinated with a Cayman Islands law firm to file the necessary injunctions. The cost, another $15,000 from my trust, was insignificant compared to the satisfaction of knowing Harold's stolen funds would be locked in place just as he thought himself safely beyond reach. "The timing is perfect," Leah reported after confirmation from our Cayman legal team. "The injunctions will be served Monday morning just as banks open. If he tries to access or transfer funds, he'll discover everything's frozen pending investigation." As evening settled over Portland, I sat on Emily's small balcony, watching the city lights emerge against the darkening sky. After days of reaction, responding to betrayals, revelations, and manipulations, I had finally seized initiative. The hunter had become the hunted, though Harold didn't yet realize it. My phone chimed with an incoming call from an international SAU number. "Curious," I answered. "Is this Irene Bennett?" A male voice with a British accent inquired. "Speaking. Who is this?" "James Crawford, security manager at the Ritz-Carlton Grand Cayman. I understand you've been trying to locate a guest of ours, Harold Bennett?" My pulse quickened. "Yes, that's correct." "Well, we've had a rather unusual situation develop. Mr. Bennett appears to have suffered some kind of anxiety attack in our lobby about an hour ago. He was quite agitated, shouting about accounts and betrayal. Our medical team has sedated him, but he's been asking for you specifically." I gripped the phone tighter, trying to process this unexpected development. Did something trigger this episode? According to our front desk staff, he had just returned from visiting one of the local banks. Apparently, he received some troubling news regarding his accounts. He kept mentioning Irene knows and something about hidden money. A cold smile formed on my lips as understanding dawned. Harold must have attempted an early withdrawal or transfer, only to be informed of pending restrictions on the accounts. The realization that his scheme was unraveling, that I had somehow countered his carefully constructed plan, had triggered his breakdown. "I see," I replied calmly. "Please inform Mr. Bennett that I'll be in touch through appropriate legal channels. And Mr. Crawford? You might want to notify local authorities that he's a person of interest in an ongoing fraud investigation." After ending the call, I immediately contacted Detective Morales and the Stevens team with this new development. Harold's psychological collapse represented a significant advantage, one we could leverage to expedite recovery of the stolen funds. For the first time since awakening in the hospital to discover Alvin's betrayal, I felt something close to satisfaction. The hidden fortune my grandfather had insisted I keep separate from my marriage hadn't just protected me financially. It had empowered me to fight back with resources my betrayers never knew I possessed. Harold had orchestrated his elaborate scheme thinking I was vulnerable and isolated. He would now learn just how catastrophically he had miscalculated. Harold's collapse in Grand Cayman accelerated everything. Cayman authorities, now alerted to the situation, detained him for questioning regarding the source of his funds. With pressure mounting from multiple directions, his carefully constructed scheme began unraveling with remarkable speed. "He's agreed to voluntary repatriation of the funds," Eric reported during our morning conference call. "His attorney is positioning it as a misunderstanding between family members, hoping to mitigate criminal charges." "A misunderstanding?" I repeated incredulously. "He orchestrated the theft of our life savings while I was critically ill, manipulated his brother into being the fall guy, and fled the country with the money." "It's just legal posturing," Leah assured me. "The evidence against him is overwhelming, especially now that Alvin is cooperating fully with investigators." I'd spent the weekend at Emily's apartment, regaining strength and planning my next steps. My surgical incision was healing well, and the follow-up appointment with Dr. Lester had confirmed my physical recovery was proceeding ahead of schedule. Now it was time to reclaim the other parts of my life. I'd like to see the house today, I decided. Not to move back yet, but to assess the situation and collect what I need. Emily offered to drive me, and Detective Morales arranged for an officer to meet us there, a precaution she insisted upon until all legal matters were resolved. The sight of our craftsman-style home in the West Hills brought conflicting emotions. The carefully tended garden, the blue front door I'd chosen, the reading nook visible through the bay window, all reminders of the life I'd believed was real. Inside, the house felt both familiar and foreign. I moved through the rooms with Emily beside me, collecting essential items and personal possessions with a detachment that surprised even me. The framed photos of Alvin and me on our honeymoon in Greece, at academic functions, celebrating anniversaries. I left them all hanging, relics of a marriage built on incomplete truths. In my home office, I carefully packed my professional materials and the sentimental items that predated my relationship with Alvin. My grandmother's antique letter opener, the first dollar I'd earned as a financial advisor, the well-worn copy of Security Analysis that had launched my career in investment management. "Are you okay?" Emily asked gently as I paused before the bookshelf where Alvin and I had merged our collections, his economic theories intermingled with my financial analysis. "I think I am," I realized, somewhat surprised by the calm I felt. "This house, these things, they're just the shell of what I thought my life was. The substance of who I am exists independently of all this." My phone rang with a call from Gianna. The news she delivered changed everything. "The funds are being returned," she announced. "All $237,000 from Harold's Cayman accounts, plus an additional $43,000 he apparently had in a Singapore account. The transfers should complete by tomorrow morning." "That's more than was taken," I noted, puzzled by the discrepancy. "Harold's attorney is calling the excess interest and compensation in hopes of demonstrating remorse. Reading between the lines, I think he's desperate to avoid maximum penalties." The recovery had happened faster than any of us anticipated. Harold's psychological breakdown had apparently convinced his legal team that a quick resolution offered his best chance to avoid the harshest consequences. "What happens now?" I asked. "The funds will go into the secure holding account we established. You can then decide how to distribute them, keeping them separate or returning a portion to joint accounts with Alvin, depending on how you wish to proceed with the divorce." The mention of divorce brought clarity. Regardless of the complex circumstances surrounding the theft, Harold's manipulation, Alvin's hidden son, the layers of deception, the fundamental trust in my marriage had been irreparably broken. "Keep everything separate," I instructed. "I'll decide on the final disposition after consulting with the divorce attorney." As Emily helped me carry my belongings to her car, I glanced back at the house one last time. Whatever happened with the legal proceedings against Harold and Alvin, whatever division of assets eventually occurred through the divorce, I had already reclaimed what mattered most: my autonomy and the confidence to rebuild on my own terms. The hidden fortune my grandfather left me would provide the foundation, but the strength to move forward came from within, a resilience I hadn't known I possessed until betrayal forced me to discover it. 2 weeks after my discharge from the hospital, Harold Bennett was extradited back to the United States. The breakdown in Grand Cayman had evolved into what his attorneys were now describing as a stress-induced psychiatric episode, resulting in his voluntary return to face charges. "He's requested a meeting with you," Detective Morales informed me during our weekly update call. "His attorney says he wants to apologize in person before the arraignment." "Absolutely not," was my immediate response. The thought of sitting across from the architect of so much deception held no appeal. "Actually," Eric interjected carefully, "there might be strategic value in hearing what he has to say. With Alvin's cooperation secured, Harold remains the primary barrier to a clean resolution of all this." I considered this perspective. While the stolen funds had been recovered, the criminal proceedings against both brothers continued to move forward. Alvin faced lesser charges related to financial misappropriation, while Harold's case involved multiple felonies including fraud, conspiracy, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. "What's your instinct?" I asked Leah, who had proven consistently insightful throughout this ordeal. Harold strikes me as someone whose ego requires closure on his own terms, she observed. He likely can't stand that his carefully constructed plan fell apart so completely. Meeting with you gives him one last chance to control the narrative, but it also gives you an opportunity to understand exactly how this scheme developed. After careful consideration, I agreed to a supervised meeting at the district attorney's office. Detective Morales would be present, along with Eric to protect my legal interests. Harold looked diminished when they brought him into the conference. His usual confident demeanor replaced by a nervous energy that manifested in constant small movements. The designer clothes he'd favored were exchanged for a standard-issue jumpsuit, his normally perfect hair now unkempt. "Irene," he began immediately. "Thank you for—" "Let's skip the pleasantries," I interrupted, unwilling to endure performative gratitude. "You requested this meeting. Why?" Harold's eyes darted to his attorney, who nodded encouragingly. "I wanted to explain myself, not to excuse what I did, but to help you understand." "Understand what? How you manipulated your brother into stealing from me while I was fighting for my life? How you planned to position yourself as my savior while absconding with our savings?" He flinched at the directness of my assessment. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Not originally." "Tell me then, how was it supposed to happen?" Harold took a deep breath, seeming to organize his thoughts. "It started small. My business was failing, investments that went wrong, partners who pulled out. I needed a loan, but my credit was destroyed. I asked Alvin for help, and he refused, I guessed. No, that's just it. He agreed immediately, offered me $25,000 from your joint savings, but he made me promise never to tell you about it." Harold's expression darkened. "He said you were controlling with money, that you monitored every penny, that he had to hide financial decisions from you to maintain any autonomy in your marriage." The characterization was so wildly inaccurate that I nearly laughed. I had always handled our finances by mutual agreement, with complete transparency. That's absurd. We made financial decisions together. That's what I realized later, Harold admitted. But at the time, I believed him. It fit the narrative he'd created about your relationship. The domineering financial expert wife controlling her academic husband. "So, you took his money and— then what? Decided to take more?" "The loan helped temporarily, but my situation worsened. I approached Alvin again 6 months later, but this time he hesitated. That's when he mentioned your grandfather's inheritance in passing, a substantial trust he couldn't access. I felt a chill as the pieces aligned. So, you started wondering how to get to that money instead?" Harold nodded, shame briefly crossing his features. "I became fixated on it, the solution to all my problems. When you were hospitalized with the infection, it seemed like an opportunity. To manipulate Alvin into taking our joint savings while positioning yourself to potentially access my inheritance if I died or trusted you during recovery. I finished for him, the calculated coldness of his plan still shocking despite everything. I'd learned? Yes. The simple admission hung in the air between us. I convinced Alvin that Alexander needed expensive medical treatment. Used the son he'd kept secret all those years as leverage. Made him believe he was finally being a proper father by helping with this fictional emergency. While telling me, Alvin was planning to run away with another woman, I added. The forged prenuptial agreement with Rachel Winters. Harold looked down at his hands. I needed you to believe the worst of Alvin so you'd never reconcile, never discover the truth about Alexander's non-existent medical emergency. Rachel was a convenient target, professional connection, appropriately attractive, limited social, media presence to contradict the story. The methodical construction of his deception was breathtaking in its thoroughness, revealing a calculating mind I'd never glimpsed beneath his usually personable exterior. What I don't understand, I said, finally, is why you thought you'd get away with it. Surely you knew the truth would eventually emerge. For the first time, Harold met my gaze directly. Because people believe what they expect to see. You expected marital betrayal because that's the narrative our society has normalized. The husband who abandons his sick wife. Law enforcement. Expected financial exploitation because that's a pattern they recognize. Everyone was so ready to accept the story I crafted that no one questioned the inconsistencies until it was almost too late. His assessment was disturbingly accurate. I had accepted the narrative of Alvin's betrayal without questioning the convenient evidence that appeared to confirm it. The violation felt doubly painful, knowing how easily I'd been manipulated during my most vulnerable moment. "I am truly sorry, Irene," Harold offered, seemingly genuine regret in his voice. "Not just for being caught, but for what I did. I became someone I never thought I could be." I studied him silently, searching for sincerity amid the performance. Whether his remorse was genuine or simply another calculated move to reduce his sentence remained unclear. Ultimately, it didn't matter. "Your apology means nothing to me," I replied, my voice steady. "But your confession will mean something to the prosecutor. I've heard enough." As I gathered my things to leave, Harold called after me. "How did you do it? How did you track the money so quickly, arrange the Cayman injunctions? Alvin swears he never told you about my financial problems or where I might go." I paused at the door and turned back, allowing myself a small, satisfied smile. "My grandfather taught me that money reveals character, Harold. He also taught me how to protect what's mine. The inheritance you coveted didn't just provide financial security. It gave me access to resources you never imagined I had." The confusion on his face was the closest thing to satisfaction I'd felt since this ordeal began. I left without another word, closing the door on Harold Bennett and the elaborate web of deception he'd woven around my life. 1 month after my confrontation with Harold, I signed the final divorce papers. Alvin had agreed to an uncontested dissolution, waiving any claim to the recovered funds or my inheritance. In exchange, I didn't pursue maximum restitution for his role in the financial misappropriation. It was a clean break, legally at least. "How do you feel?" Emily asked as we left the attorney's office, the manila envelope containing my divorce decree tucked into my handbag. "Lighter," I replied, surprised by the accuracy of the word. Like I've set down something I didn't realize was so heavy. We celebrated with lunch at a small bistro overlooking the Willamette River. Emily had become more than just my temporary landlord during my recovery. She'd become a genuine friend, offering perspective untainted by the history I shared with. "Alvin, have you decided what you'll do about the house?" she asked over glasses of celebratory champagne. "Sell it," I said with newfound certainty. "Too many memories, too much deception built into those walls. I've already contacted a realtor." The practical dismantling of my married life had progressed with surprising efficiency. Joint accounts formally separated. Insurance policies updated. My maiden name, Maxwell, reclaimed in all official documentation. Each step had felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. My phone buzzed with an incoming message from Alexander Bennett. In the aftermath of the crisis, we'd established a cautious communication. 2 people connected by circumstance rather than choice. Heard the divorce was finalized today. I hope you're doing okay. His thoughtfulness touched me. Despite the painful way we'd been introduced to each other's existence, Alexander had consistently shown compassion throughout the legal proceedings against his father and uncle. I am, thank you. How are your studies going? I replied. Final exams next week. After that, starting an internship with a sustainable economics group in Victoria. Our exchanges remained cordial but careful, neither of us quite knowing what relationship, if any, we should maintain. He was, after all, the secret son of my ex-husband, an uncomfortable reminder of the deception that had underpinned my marriage. Yet he was also an innocent party in the whole affair, manipulated by Harold just as Alvin and I had been. Any word on Harold's plea deal? Emily asked, pulling me back to our conversation. Eric says it's nearly finalized. Guilty plea to 3 felony counts in exchange for a reduced sentence, likely 5 to 7 years. The punishment seemed both excessive and insufficient for the elaborate betrayal he'd engineered. Alvin got probation and community service, since he returned all the funds and cooperated fully. Are you satisfied with that outcome? I considered the question carefully. Justice isn't really about satisfaction. It's about consequences appropriate to actions. So, yes, I suppose I am. As lunch concluded, we walked along the riverfront, the spring sunshine warming my face. My strength had fully returned, the surgical scar from my appendectomy now just a faint line across my abdomen, a physical reminder of vulnerability overcome. I have something to show you, I said to Emily as we reached a bench overlooking the water. I pulled out my tablet and opened a document I'd been working on for weeks. It's a business plan. I'm thinking of starting my own financial advisory practice, specializing in asset protection for women. Emily scrolled through the detailed proposal, her expression impressed. This is incredibly thorough. When would you launch? After the house sells. I'll use part of my inheritance as startup capital. The plan had crystallized during my recovery, a way to transform my traumatic experience into something meaningful. My grandfather protected me with that trust. I want to help other women establish similar safeguards. Sentinel Financial Security. Emily read the proposed company name aloud. I like it. Always on guard, always watchful. I explained the meaning behind the name. That's what financial independence requires. As the afternoon light glinted off the river, I felt a sense of purpose solidifying within me. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed: resilience, strategic thinking, and the courage to begin again. To new beginnings, Emily offered, mimicking a toast with her coffee cup. I smiled, raising my water bottle in response. To new beginnings, and to the hidden fortunes we discover within ourselves when everything else is taken away. 6 months after my hospitalization, I stood in the sleek reception area of Sentinel Financial Security, my vision transformed into reality. The office space in downtown Portland featured clean lines, abundant natural light, and an atmosphere of calm competence. The furniture was elegant but comfortable, designed to put clients at ease while discussing sensitive financial matters. Your 10 o'clock appointment has arrived, Leah announced, looking professional and assured in her new role as Chief Legal Officer for Sentinel. After the successful resolution of my case, she had accepted my offer to join the venture, bringing her expertise in financial law to strengthen our asset protection services. My first client of the day was a referral from Dr. Lester, a woman, recently diagnosed with a chronic illness, concerned about protecting her assets during what might be years of treatment. The parallels to my own situation weren't lost on me, though her husband appeared to be supportive rather than exploitative. Mrs. Chen, please come in. I greeted her warmly, leading her to my office where the wall of windows overlooked the city skyline. I understand you're concerned about maintaining financial security during your medical journey. As she outlined her situation, I recognized the fear beneath her practical questions, the vulnerability that comes with serious illness, the worry about depending on others during recovery. These were emotions I understood intimately now. The most important thing to remember, I told her as our consultation concluded, is that preparing for the worst doesn't mean you don't trust those around you. It means you're ensuring everyone's security, including your own, no matter what happens. She left with a customized protection plan, a combination of trusts, insurance adjustments, and authorization protocols designed to safeguard her assets while maintaining necessary access during treatment. The relief in her expression reminded me why I had created Sentinel in the first place. Between appointments, I checked my messages, finding an update from Detective Morales. Harold's sentencing was complete, 6 years with possibility of parole, after 4, plus restitution payments to cover the costs of the investigation. The notification brought closure rather than satisfaction. Harold's punishment wouldn't erase what had happened, but it did establish consequences for his elaborate deception. A separate message from Alexander informed me he'd be visiting Portland next month for an economics conference. "Would you be open to meeting for coffee?" he asked tentatively. I pondered the request, still uncertain about what relationship, if any, I wanted with Alvin's secret son. After careful consideration, I replied affirmatively. Whatever happened with that meeting, it represented a choice made from strength rather than obligation. My final appointment of the day was with Emily, who had recently received an unexpected inheritance from a distant aunt. Our friendship had deepened over the months since my hospitalization, evolving from caregiver and patient to genuine friends who supported each other through life's transitions. "I don't want to make the same mistakes my aunt did," Emily explained as we reviewed her newfound assets. "She kept everything in cash, hidden around her house. The family only found it because she left detailed instructions in her will. Financial security isn't about hiding money under mattresses." I smiled, thinking of my grandfather's more sophisticated approach. It's about strategic protection and appropriate access. As we worked through her options, I reflected on how my perspective on wealth had transformed. Money wasn't just numbers in accounts or property deeds. It was a reflection of values, a tool for security, and sometimes a test of character. My grandfather had understood this fundamental truth, which was why he had structured my inheritance as he did. After Emily left, I remained at my desk, reviewing the growth of Sentinel over its first 3 months of operation. Our client base had expanded steadily, primarily through referrals from medical professionals, family law attorneys, and financial counselors who recognized the unique value of our specialized services. The sale of my former home had closed the previous week, far above asking price due to Portland's competitive real estate market. I had purchased a smaller but elegant condominium in the Pearl District, a space that was entirely mine, with no memories of Alvin embedded in its walls. The wind shifted outside my office windows, sending autumn leaves swirling past the glass. 6 months since awakening in that hospital bed to discover betrayal. 6 months of rebuilding, reclaiming, and reimagining my life. The journey had been painful, but transformative. My phone rang, Gianna from the private bank that still managed my grandfather's trust. "Irene, I have excellent news," she began without preamble. "The investment portfolio repositioning we discussed has outperformed projections by nearly 12%. Your grandfather would be proud. You've grown his legacy rather than simply preserving it." The validation warmed me unexpectedly. Xavier Blackwood had been a difficult man in many ways, but his financial acumen had been undeniable. That I had not only protected but expanded his careful investments felt like honoring his memory appropriately. "There's something else," Gianna continued. "We found an additional document in the original trust materials, a letter he left for you to be delivered when most needed. The trust officers never determined when that moment was, so it remained in the vault. Given recent events, I thought, perhaps now might be the right time." Curiosity piqued, I agreed to stop by the bank on my way home. The sealed envelope Gianna presented me contained a single page of heavy stationery, my grandfather's distinctive handwriting flowing across it in blue ink. "Irene, if you're reading this, you've discovered the true value of financial independence. Money is never merely money. It is freedom, security, and the power to direct your own life when others might prefer to direct it for you. I kept my fortune separate from those I loved, not out of distrust, but from clear-eyed understanding of human nature. Those who love us don't always love us wisely. Those who claim to protect us sometimes protect only their interests in us. The wealth I leave you is not a gift, but a responsibility. Use it to build, to grow, to secure yourself against whatever storms may come. And perhaps most importantly, use it to help others find their own financial sovereignty. Remember always, True wealth isn't measured in accounts or properties, but in the freedom to live authentically on your own terms. With pride in the woman you've become, Xavier Blackwood folded the letter carefully, vision blurring slightly as I tucked it into my purse. My grandfather had somehow anticipated the very lesson I'd learned through betrayal and recovery, that financial independence was about more than money. It was about agency, security, and the ability to rebuild when necessary. As I walked to my car, autumn sunlight warming my face despite the crisp air, I felt the weight of the letter in my bag, a connection to the past that somehow illuminated the path forward. My hidden fortune had saved me financially, but the greater gift had been the discovery of my own resilience. In the end, what Alvin and Harold hadn't known about wasn't just the money. It was the strength they never saw, the determination they never measured, and the spirit they never truly understood. 1 year to the day after I collapsed on my kitchen floor, I stood on the balcony of my condominium, watching the sunset paint Portland's skyline in gold and crimson. Sentinel Financial Security had grown beyond my initial projections, now employing a team of 6 specialists dedicated to helping women establish financial independence. That morning, I'd received a letter from Alvin, his first direct communication since the divorce. He was relocating to Vancouver permanently to be closer to Alexander, having accepted a position at the University of British Columbia. The letter contained no excuses, no pleas for understanding, just a simple acknowledgement of the pain his deception had caused, and his hope that I had found healing. I'd read it once, then filed it away, neither answering nor destroying it. Some chapters are best simply closed rather than revisited. As darkness fell across the city, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the vulnerable woman fighting for her life in a hospital bed to the founder and CEO of a thriving financial security firm. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had instead become the catalyst for transformation. If you're listening to my story, perhaps you're facing your own moment of betrayal or loss. Maybe you've discovered that someone you trusted has hidden parts of themselves from you, or perhaps you've awakened to find your security threatened in ways you never anticipated. I want you to know this. What was done to you does not define you. The actions others take against you reveal their character, not yours. When Alvin emptied our accounts, when Harold manipulated everyone around him, they believed they were demonstrating their power over my life. What they actually revealed was the fundamental weakness in their own characters. True strength never requires deception or exploitation of others. My grandfather understood something essential about resilience. He knew that security isn't found in blind trust, but in clear-eyed preparation. His gift to me wasn't just the financial safety net that protected me when betrayal came. It was the wisdom to understand that independence requires both vigilance and courage. Financial independence isn't just about having money. It's about having options. It's about facing crisis with resources that extend beyond the purely monetary. Knowledge, support networks, professional expertise, and most importantly, belief in your own capacity to rebuild. Whatever storm you're weathering, remember that your value was never contained in your bank accounts or reflected in someone else's treatment of you. Your worth exists independent of these external measures, waiting to be recognized and claimed by the most important person in your life. You. My hidden fortune saved me financially, but my real salvation came from discovering strengths I never knew I possessed until they were absolutely necessary. Resilience isn't something we're born with. It's something we build, decision by decision, even when those decisions are made in the darkest moments of our lives. This isn't just my story. It's an invitation to write your own next chapter, because the most powerful hidden fortune isn't in any account or investment portfolio. It's the reserve of courage waiting within you, ready to emerge exactly when you need it most. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.